Hey loves, hope you all are doing great and welcome to today's video, which is part 2 of last week's video. Today's video is going to be the cutting and stitching part, and last week's video was the pattern drafting part. So if you haven't seen that yet, I would put the link in the description box so that you can see that and then you can follow up with this. So without any further ado, let's get right into this video. I am going to use this cotton fabric with abstract prints, and I have two of them. I have one which is 1.5 meters and the other one is only 1 meter. So I will be starting with the 1.5 meters to see if that is enough. So if it's not enough, then I would cut a little bit or how much I would need from the 1 meter. But at the end of the day, I ended up using only 1.5 meters. So yeah. So these are the measurements I used to cut my tiers, just in case you would like to know. Now I'm cutting all my pattern pieces and I'm starting with the tiers so that I know how much fabric is left. So the tiers are taking most of the fabric. So make sure you start with that, then you know how much fabric is left for the front. So once I was done with the tiers, I went ahead and laid my top pieces. And then I also added allowance on the fabric. So you can add the allowance on the pattern before laying it on the fabric. So whichever way you would like to do it is fine. So make sure you have all your pieces, 4 of the back pieces, and then 2 of the center front pieces, 4 of the bra cap pieces, 4 of the side front pieces, and then also the straps for tying at the front part, and then also the straps for all the ruffles for the bra cap. So also make sure you have your tiered pieces. You can use your own measurements in cutting. I just showed you mine just in case someone wants to use the same measurements, but it doesn't have any special formula. You just make sure that the second tier is longer than the first tier, and then the third tier is longer than the second tier. So yeah. So I started stitching the garter stitches on the tiered pieces, 2 on each of them, and then I went ahead and pulling the garter stitches to form the gathers. So once that was done, I went ahead and joined the tiers accordingly. So I joined the second tier to the bottom of the first tier, and then also once that was done, I joined the last tier, or the one that looks like a ruffle, to the bottom of the second tier. So that is how it's supposed to be done. And make sure that you release the gathers so that it will fit the corresponding place. Once that was done, I moved it to my machine and stitched everything. And this is how it should look. And also remember to take out all the basting stitches you use for the gathers. You don't want it to be showing on your dress when you're wearing it. So once you're sure that this is done, lay this aside, and then now we would move on to stitching the top pieces. So with the front pieces, I attached the side front to the center front and then pin them up. So I did that for both the outer piece of the front and also the lining pieces. I mean the lining part of the front. I also made garter stitches on the frills for the bra cap, so I folded the strap in half and then stitched the garter stitches on the raw edges. So go ahead and stitch the front pieces together. And then make sure with the frills you finish the sides. So you stitch it in and then turn it over before you make the garter stitches so that the ends would be neat and nice. So this is how the front pieces look. I made the top stitch at the seams at the front, and now what I'm going to do is to join the back pieces to the front pieces. So I would put them together at the side seam and then pin them. So I'll do that for both the lining fabric and the outer piece. And then I'll go ahead and stitch them. And this is what you should have if you did everything right. Now let's move on to stitching the top part of the dress to the skirt part. So I will take the outer part of the top and then I would attach it to the waist of the skirt. So I'll make sure that they are both the same length. If not, I have to release or pull in more gathers so that both waists are the same. So once I get the measurement, I will go ahead and pin the waist together. Once that has been stitched, I'll move on to my serger and then finish all the raw edges. You can use your zigzag stitches to do that if you don't have a serger. And then I also went ahead to fix my zipper. So this is what I have at this moment. The zipper has been fixed. And what I'm going to do next is to attach the lining part of the top to the outer part of the top with right sides facing, and then I would pin and stitch them together. And this is how it should look after you have stitched them. And then I flip over the center back right sides facing like that and then stitch quite close to the zipper. So this will finish the raw edges of that side. And then once that has been stitched, I will trim off the corners so that once I flip it to the right side, it will be sharp. So you can see that that part of the zipper has been finished. So what I'm going to do now is to finish the raw edges of the lining fabric. So what I'll do is to flip in the allowance or turn in the allowance and pin it to the waist. And what I'm going to do is to use the stitch in a ditch method to stitch it to the waist part of the dress. So basically I'm just turning in the allowance, which was half of an inch. And once that is done, I will turn over to the right side of the dress and then stitch in the waist. I've done this several times on my channel, so you should know what I am doing. So this is how it looks from the inside now. So now I'll move on to the stitching of the caps or preparation of the cap. So this is the ruffles with the gathered stitches already done. And then what I'm going to do is to pull in the stitches to form the gathers. And once the ruffles are ready, I would sandwich them in between the lining part of the cap and the outer part of the bra cap. And this is how it should look once you're done. This is the outer part of the bra cap. This will be facing the outer part, and this is the inner part. You can see that I did an understitch so that the inner part won't roll out. So yeah, make sure you do that. So once that is done, I went ahead and did the gathered stitches on the lower side of the bra cap, and then also found the center and then pull in the gathered stitches. So I did find the center on the bra cap because I wanted to attach it to the seam on the top so that the cap is equal. I mean, both sides would be equal. I also cut a bias strap and pinned it on the side of the bra cap. So basically the corset cap is sandwiched in between the bias strap and the other side of the top. So this will be used to finish the seam after it has been stitched. And then stitch. So do that for both pieces, and also remember to put in your strap in between the cap and the center front. So what I'm doing now is trimming down the seam where I joined the bra cap to the top. From there, I would finish the raw edges of the seam with the bias that was attached over there. So I'll basically flip it over to the raw edges of the seam and stitch it, as you can see. And once that is done, it will also serve as a top stitch on the outer part of the top. And this is how it looks from the inside. You can see it is neatly finished, and also from the outside you can see the top stitch over there. So once that is done, also you see that at the center part of the top there is this strap with buttons on top. So I did cut a strap of 1 inch. I did cut it a bit bigger and then folding in the side on the sides to finish it. So the end, I mean, the size at the end was 1 inch. So yours could be smaller, it could be 3/4 of an inch. That is fine. So make sure you fix that right at the center and then stitch close to the edges. And once that is done, I would sew on my buttons. I only have 3. On the original style it was 4, so I only had 3, which doesn't change anything. So yeah, I'll go ahead and stitch my buttons. and also finish the hem of the dress. And voila, we are done. Now let's see how the dress looks on.